close that down, double click, and I'm going to grab everything but that ZBrush document. Window, arrange, float all in window so you can see what I'm doing here. So we've got a shadow pass, we've got no shadows, and let's go ahead and we got our matte ID, lighting, ground shadows, full render, and cavity. So the reason I have a full render here and a no shadows pass is I can hopefully, if I take my shadow pass that I did, hold down shift and just drag that on there. And then we can do, with this, we'll go ahead and name this shadow. Now this is shadow without the ground plane. We'll do that later. So I'm going to change this to a multiply layer. And now I have shadows on this object. You know what? Let's see if we can go ahead. Let's go back into ZBrush core. And we'll go back to a flat color, white. So where it says document back, I'm going to click that and just drag that over here to black. And now I'm going to do a BPR render. And that gave me a mask. So now I can go to document, export, and we'll call this mask. So we'll use that. So I'm going to open that up, double click back here. So now we have a mask layer, perfect. So with this mask layer selected, I'm going to do Control A, Control C to copy that. I'm going to go into my channels here, do a new channel, paste that. So now we have an alpha. In fact, now that I'm talking about that, let's go back into ZBrush core. Yeah, there's no depth grabber. I wonder, do we have, you know, if we had a material that would grab depth, that would be great. But I don't see one, so we're going to skip it. So we don't get a depth pass, not a big deal. So we have our alpha mask here. So if I control click this mask, I can go up to the shadow and I can apply a vector mask using that selection that I got from control clicking this alpha here. So now this shadow is just going to affect, you know, within that apple mask that we made. Now, of course, you don't have to do that. We can, it was, I mean, all it was doing was making the background darker, which isn't a deal breaker for me, but if you want to, we'll go ahead and enable this layer mask. We'll double click the background here. We'll control click that again. We'll, with that selected, we'll go ahead and make a mask for that. And now it's just completely cut out. And that'll allow us to just drop a layer below here. And I don't need this mask anymore. It's in my alpha channel. And oh boy, let me move this over. I hate working on one monitor here. So I'm just going to do like a middle gray. Okay, go back to our working document here. I'm just going to do a quick fill, which was edit, fill, color, and you can use the fill dropper or whatever you want to do. So now we have this, we'll call this background. And if we're working non-destructively, I mean, you could do that as a color, a fill, just a fill layer. That you can just do a color swatch, but we can just add a levels to that. I'm going to hold down Alt and attach this levels just to this background. We can make it darker or brighter, so we'll make it a little bit darker here. And then we have our render layer, and now we have a shadow pass here. So now with this shadow pass, what we can do is we can do, for example, a hue saturation. If we do like a colorize now, and then like saturate it to like a blue, it's going to make everything blue. If I just wanted to make my shadows blue, I need to hold down Alt and then just link that hue saturation just to my shadow. So now we can do a little bit of a hue shift here, and you can double click this. You can make it not quite so saturated. So add a little bit of saturation. You can even go in here and make it lighter so it's not so shadowy. You can kind of make it a little less dense here. So kind of up to you. But I'll go ahead and put that back at 0. And ideally, we wouldn't have even had that hot rim light in there. We would just add that in later with our lighting pass, which I'll get to. I'll get to it now. So here's my lighting pass here. You can Control A, Control C, or you can just Shift drag this on here, and we'll call this lighting. Now we're going to go ahead and Control click that mask. Again, that's just Control clicking this alpha here, and we'll apply that as a vector mask. And now this is just pure lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen, and all the light pixels are now going to show up on our object as a lighting pass. And just like with the shadows, I can do a hue saturation, link these two by tapping Alt. We can go to colorize, and we can make this warm, or we can make it cold, or whatever color you want to make it saturated or not saturated. And if you want to do another lighting pass, you just got to hop back in there and change your light around. Just move the light around. Of course, you'll have to go back to whatever material we were on to get that lighting, and then just re-render that out. Anyways, we have a matte ID pass here. This one we're not going to put in our channels, but we are going to shift drag it on there. And now let's say, you know what, I don't like the color of that worm. So we're going to take our matte ID layer here, hit enter, and then I'm going to go up here to my magic wand tool, or you can go, you can magic wand tool and select that, or you can go to, let's go ahead and deselect. So Control D, select color range, and we can go, okay, that worm, you can do fuzziness, so it's just picking up the light blue areas we have here, and now we selected the worm So we're going to go ahead and hide that. And if I want to change the color of that worm, I'm going to go down here to render, add you can do a levels, you can do a hue saturation. I can do a color balance here. And now with this color balance, I can go add some red, make a little more orange, or I can add some green, make him super duper green, or make him change his color like this. And even on top of that, I can click that mask again. I can go ahead and do a levels, and now I can just make him pop a little bit more by changing his levels here. So now he's a little bit bluer. Let's say I want to change the color of that apple. I'm going to turn my ID on again. Here's my apple skin. I can just magic wand select it, hit W. Now I've got the apple selected. I'll go ahead and do a hue saturation shift. And now I can just kind of shift that hue around to like, oh, I don't want a red apple. I want to do a green apple. No problem. I want that leaf to be brown. No problem. Magic wand select. And if it's non-contiguous, make sure if you have contiguous checked on and you select something, it's only going to do that. And if this isn't attached, you have to shift click that one. So turn off contiguous. If you want to select everything with that color, we'll do another hue saturation. We'll hide that. And now this one, we'll go ahead and just shift that leaf over to a brownish, maybe make it a little more saturated. Let's see what else we got. We got the full render here. Now the full render I don't really need because the shadows I have packed in separately. So it's a full render. It looks nice. I'm just going to kill that. Ground shadow we have separately. I'm going to hold down shift and pop that over here. And we'll make that a multiply. And we'll go ahead and add that vector mask that we use with our alpha. But that actually cuts it out. So let's delete that layer mask. I'm going to set it to normal. And what I really want to do is make the shadow really dark and everything else really light. So I'm just going to really quickly do Control L. And I'm going to make that shadow really dark and then make everything else really light, just using levels. So now I've got a nice shadow path where the shadow is just black. And now I can go in here and do a multiply. And it's just a shadow. And at this point, I can do Gaussian blur if I want to kind of blur that shadow out. And I can drop the opacity of this layer if I want to just kind of decrease that. So now we have a ground shadow. What else we got? Okay, ground shadow's done. I think we just got one more. And again, you could do multiple lighting passes, multiple color passes, you know, do as many as you need to. And this one we have a cavity. So let's see what this one does. We can drive cavity over here. And we'll say this is a multiply. And we'll go ahead and add that vector mask for just the apple. And then we'll do I'm just going to do a quick levels and see if this like adds anything to it. It kind of makes the skin more bumpy, and then you can just turn it on and off. And if it doesn't really add much, don't bother. If it does add a little bit and you kind of like it, keep it. If not, just dump it. In fact, let's go back into ZBrush Core one more time. I'm going to change the lighting around just to kind of a neutral lighting here, and we'll do an intensity of like 2. I'm going to change this to chrome, do a reflected map here. And this can sometimes be interesting too. So I'm going to do shadows off, just do a quick BPR render, document, export, and we'll call this one Chrome. Back into Photoshop. Last one, I promise. Double click this. I'm just trying to show you different ways to capture stuff and throw it in there. So we've got Chrome in here. I'm going to shift drag this, and let's say we want to give a little bit of reflectivity to that apple skin. So I'm going to go bring back my matte ID, W for magic wand tool, turn that off, add that as a layer. And then you can just go through here, and you can just, it's very simple. So you can just drop that opacity down and just dial that in if you want to give it a little bit of reflectivity. Or you can go through here on the blend layers as well. Let's go ahead and crank that back up to 100. And with that selected, you can just tap the down arrow and just kind of cycle through and see if there's a blend mode that kind of just gives it a cool kind of coated look. And it doesn't matter if it's strong or not, because you can always dial it back through opacity. So just kind of go through those really quickly. Let's say this one's kind of nice. So we'll call this reflective. Or if you don't like that, let's go ahead and just delete that layer mask. Let's say, you know what, I want it on the leaf. Select the leaf here, and then add that as a layer mask. So now the leaf has a little bit of reflectivity to it. If it's too much, just dial that opacity down. You can just dial in just a little bit of reflectivity just to kind of make it pop a little bit more. Or whatever, you could do it in anything you want. So anyway, just a way to break down an image in ZBrush Core if you want to do nice BPR style renders.